And I said, I just don't want to go back in. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Pete. Well done. Right. So if everybody could, if they haven't done already, I think most people have. If you could put your company name alongside your own name as well, please, that would be great. I think just one or two that haven't done that. That'd be really helpful with Caroline then when we sort out the main breakout rooms. So while you're doing that, let's crack on. So welcome to ScaleUp Club for December, the last one of, I can't believe I'm saying that, the last one of 2022. And this is all about, we're going to look at critical numbers today, but it's not just all about the numbers, it's also around how they're important with other aspects of what we're doing. So this is what we've got lined up for you this morning between now and 11. So quick look at the theme, but also an opportunity for some questions and answers there as well before we go into the breakout sessions, where we'll, if you've got a challenge or there's something that you'd like to talk about with the group, then we'll do that. Remember, we're all Zoom aficionados. I think I can see everybody's on mute. So if we could just go on mute while we're not speaking to avoid any unnecessary interruptions. Do use the chat facility. Just say hi to people, but also maybe if you've got questions or comments that you'd like to post as we're going around. Particularly when we're in the breakouts, remember that what's discussed in there should stay in there. Louise prefers the idea of Fight Club rules rather than Chatham House rules, but what gets discussed in the breakout stays in the breakouts. Please do look to be challenged and also to challenge, so be prepared to help with a bit of critical thinking and be always open and on the lookout for takeaways. That's what it's all about. We want people here to come and have a great time, maybe learn something new, but particularly to take something away that they can apply back in their businesses, in your businesses. And you remember, it's about helping, not about selling. So please, let's avoid any overt selling of our services and products within the rooms. And yes, if you have to leave a breakout room early, then please let Caroline know. So are we able to do the screenshot? Have we got Justin, Caroline? No. Okay, so maybe Louise, could you do a couple of screenshots? Okay, you're doing it. So I think you're going to tell us to smile? Louise is huffing away.
I am hopping away because I couldn't find the unmute button. Okay, let's do the old smiley bit then. 3, 2, 1, smile. Okie dokie, give me a second and I'll just take the other half. I'm not as good at it as Justin is.
Yeah.
So it just takes me a tiny touch longer. Right, get rid of that. And next half. 3, 2, 1, everybody smile again. Marvellous.
Yeah.
Right. Back to the thing of today.
Good. So that's at least 2 smiles everybody's got out of this morning, isn't it? So good. Right. So what's it all about, this ScaleUp Club thing? So it's all around meeting, sharing, collaborating, and learning. So we hope you get to meet some new people, but also to share experiences, share our knowledge and advice. But it's all then about that collaborating and a little bit of an opportunity to learn. And why are we so passionate about doing this? Well, we're trying to move the needle, or the needles on the dials of the number of businesses in the UK that do manage to scale up. Only 4% scale beyond 10 employees and less than 1% beyond 50. And we've done quite a lot of research and quite a lot of work into why that may be. And some of the reasons come around to this aspect of bridging the gap between strategy and execution. Only about 10% of businesses manage to get both things right. And part of what we're doing, a lot of what we're doing, is around helping people to understand why that might be. Because obviously it's important that if it's important that we do manage to get both things right, because there's businesses that are great at strategy but don't follow it through, don't achieve what they want to do. But equally, those that perhaps are not so good at the strategy, maybe they're executing well, but not necessarily in the right directions. And when it comes down to it, a lot of what we're doing with everybody is trying to help to improve the decision making within the business on a consistent basis. And you may or may not have seen this idea before of the competence stairway. And the idea is that when we're learning a new skill, and every aspect of business is no different from this, when we start off, you can think about maybe learning to drive. When you learn to drive, we're unconsciously incompetent. We don't know what we don't know, essentially. But as we start to learn, we become aware of the things that we don't know, but we know that we're still not very good at it. But then we start to become consciously competent, where we can do it, but we have to think about it. So we mechanically have to think about turning the steering wheel or pressing the foot on the clutch to change gear, all of those things. And then eventually, hopefully, we become unconsciously competent at everything. And business and skills around business are no different. We need to go through this sort of pathway. And the problem is, if we don't realize that we're unconsciously incompetent, which is part of the definition really there, then our intuition is wrong. So we can make the wrong gut decisions. The conscious incompetence, maybe we're making the wrong analysis, but then we start to make the right analysis. And then eventually we get to the point where we got the right intuition. So how do we move from being certainly consciously incompetent up through to that, and making great decisions consistently, almost by gut instinct? Well, we need a couple of things. We need a framework in which we frame our decisions, and we need great habits to be able to do that follow through. And this is our framework that we've developed over a number of years. On the left hand side here with our wheel, and you'll notice something called Rhythm 90 right at the center. But this is the framework in which and combined with the ScaleUp journey visual on the right hand side there, this is our framework. So we're looking at where are we on the ScaleUp journey, what do we need to think about next, and what's the next one, and always thinking about the 4 key decisions we need to be making around strategy, people, execution, and cash at each stage. So and this helps us to bridge that gap between the strategy and the execution that I was mentioning. And one of the tools, or one of the concepts right at the heart, is that Rhythm 90, that idea of the 90-day planning, because that gives us the opportunity every 90 days to have a bit of a reset, and it gives that clarity within the business for everybody to see, and the ability to set goals on a regular basis and make sure we're ticking off some of the strategic things and not just working on the execution every time and keeping the plate spinning or the lights on. But it also allows or enables that alignment and making sure that everybody is on the same page, if you like. And it gives us a flexibility, because we can change direction, or at least we can tweak and reset the sails rather than necessarily change direction completely. We can adjust the sails accordingly for those sailors amongst us every 90 days, but it gives us that ability to adjust course quickly and to execute accordingly. And also combined with a good business rhythm in between the 90 days, gives us that really good communication. And if we've done it well, we're assigning clear responsibilities and ownership of the various aspects of it. And it turns out that 90 days is a really good time frame as well, because 90 days is just long enough for us to achieve something significant, but not so long that it's hard to imagine what good should look like at the end of the 90 days. And the idea being that over a period of time, we make small and simple actions and good steps, and they accumulate basically, and we get a great cumulative effect as we build. And when we look back over where we've come from, we can see how far we've got. So that compound effect is amazing. So every time on ScaleUp Club, we try and pick one little aspect of the framework that I was talking about. And last time we looked at how to empower our teams, and we looked at the various steps of giving control. So rather than doing that leader follower model that we talked about, it's about how do we create leaders within the business, and that idea of stopping giving orders but giving in intent, and a few things there. And we referred to Captain David Marquette, the submarine captain, and Turn the Ship Around was the book that he's written around it. So some really good concepts. And we left you with the challenge: is what one thing could you do differently to further empower others within your business? This time we're going to look at something that we call critical numbers, and how to align our team and make them more effective. And the critical numbers come into a number of parts of the framework, including in the accountability and in the rhythm habits. And I know critical numbers sound like they could be dry, and we're going to certainly try and make sure that they're not too dry, and they're really important, and if they're used well. And they come into our in-flight checks in a couple of areas. So we look at things like, is the critical number is identified along with the 3 to 7 supporting SMART priorities, so that we know what that real focus is. But then it's about that visibility and that religiously tracking progress against the rocks, as we call them, key individual priorities, but also our individual critical numbers. So I don't think that Matt Busby is on the call, but this acronym you'll have to, if those of you that know Matt Busby, I'm not going to say it out loud, but you have to work out what that acronym is at the top. But basically, what is this all about? What does that mean? Well, critical numbers, the technical definition is that it's the one metric, operational or financial, that represents a weakness or a vulnerability that will have the most impact on the business. But it can also be an opportunity. It can be something that we're striving to achieve. So what is the one thing that we really need to focus on, that if we either get it right, will make a huge positive impact on the business, or equally, if we don't address it, will make a huge negative impact on the business, whether that be the overall performance or the long-term security potentially of the business. So that's technically what a critical number is about. Why are they important to the team? Well, we've talked a couple of things already, but it's providing that focus on what is really important, so everybody in the business can really see it. It provides a common goal, something that we can all work to, but it does also really support empowerment. And part of the way it does that is it gives a little bit of a learning opportunity for everybody in the business to understand what is important on an ongoing business. And eventually, and if we go back to that empowerment model that I put up and we talked about last time around, it's helping everybody to understand in their own minds what is the right thing to do, so they can, when they're making their own decisions, they can do so in light of what they know over time is important about the business. And we use critical numbers, I've mentioned, in a number of ways in our framework, which we call ESIS, by the way. That's the Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System. And we use them in two key ways, really. One is for the overall business. So what is the critical number, or maybe a couple of critical numbers for the overall business? But then for each individual, what we're trying to get to is that individually, we also know what our critical number is for the next 90 days, so that we can, above all else, if we were to achieve that particular number, we could say, well, at least with that, that's the really critical thing that we need to do. And then, as I mentioned, we build that in then to our business rhythm. So on a weekly, monthly, and obviously quarterly basis, tracking that progress, making sure whether we're on track or not, and therefore whether we need to adjust. A couple of questions that might help think about what could get us towards what is a critical number within our business. So, are there considerations, are there things related to our business model that are absolutely critical to the ongoing success over this next medium to short-term period? And are there any specific challenges right now that we're facing that deserve real attention? So they, for example, are we seeing declining quality? Are we seeing increasing error rates creeping in? Have we got an overdependence that's building on a particular client or maybe a key individual, or have we got high employee turnover? Whatever it might be. But what is critical for the business for the next 90 days? And it might also be what keeps us awake at night. There are probably a few of us here that wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning worrying about something in particular. Well, that might give us a clue as to what might be that critical number. And of course, if we're identifying that and doing something about it, then that's going to help us to have that feeling of a little bit more of control. Common mistake in setting critical numbers is to set it at too high a level, so that we might do something and just say, oh, well, sales are a critical level or a critical number. Well, that's all very well, but it's a bit of a lagging type number, and it's a bit high level. What we really want is something that we can influence and achieve. So, if we use an example outside of business, if we want to lose weight, then you could say our critical number is our weight. Well, okay, great, but if we want to impact that, actually maybe the critical number should be more around maybe our calorie intake, and setting a number on that, because we know if we reduce our calorie intake to a certain level, that is likely to have an impact on our weight. Or maybe it's about exercise and a certain amount of exercise and type of exercise we want to do, because they're the things that we can control. So ideally we're picking a critical number that is something that we can control. So if we were going to say, well, sales are really important to us, well, maybe there's a particular aspect of sales that is critical. So is there a point in our sales process where things are not working as well as they should do? So for example, it could be maybe we're not converting from a particular point, and then we can look at that and work out, okay, well, what is it, and what might be a critical number that we need to do there? Or is it a particular number? Do we need to be making a particular number of phone calls every quarter to the right kind of people, or every week or day to the right kind of people? What's that critical number? And that's something we can influence, that we know if we do that, that will lead to achieving the sales that we want to do. So is it all about the numbers? Granger, I said I'd bring you in here. Is it?
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin. No, that's the purpose of this slide, really. So, especially if we're D-type people in our DISC profile, we just drive by numbers and everything's numbers, numbers, numbers. But actually, a number is the outcome of the work that's done to achieve it. And that work is done by people, that could be you, and it's done by the processes. So actually the number is to help you understand where your process is failing, where your people are not motivated or focused in terms of achieving things. So it's not just the number that you need to think about. You really need to understand, is the process right? And are the people capable of delivering those numbers? So use your critical numbers to actually improve and develop your business processes and your people. It's not just about the outcome.
Brilliant. Yeah, and that whole thinking of going through it is really important. And one of the tools that we have within our armory, within the Smart 90 program that we have, is something we call the in-flight checks, and they allow us to, as a group, to have a look at some of the important areas of the business, and then have a tease out between us what we think are really important and that we should be working on, and that would have the most impact if we were to do those over the next 90 days. So critical numbers, key performance indicators, or KPIs. What's the difference? Because we've probably all had KPIs banded around. So how are critical numbers different from key performance indicators? And I think the thing here is that we've all got a set of what we might call key performance indicators within the business that should be the handful of numbers that we are looking at on an ongoing basis. The difference here is that a critical number is not normally additional to that. It's normally a subset of one of those, in that something's really come to the fore for this quarter. So that, yes, those set of 5 to 7 key performance indicators might be key, but what's critical this quarter is one particular aspect of that, and it's kind of through the 90-day planning process as well. We're getting from all the things that we could do through the things that we should do to the things then that we must do, and the critical numbers are around things that we must do. Luke, was there anything you wanted to say on that link between critical numbers and KPIs?
No, I was just thinking that my critical number is definitely calorie count.
Yeah. All right.
Coming into Christmas. But yeah, no, Kevin, I think it all makes a hell of a lot of sense. And I like the way Granger explained it there, in that your numbers are the things that you're looking at, that are going to help the people and the process do the things, so that you can measure and see what success looks like. Yeah, instead of KPIs, then they're not negatives, they're positives if you play them right.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's a couple of things that might help to just see the difference. On the left here, we've got a couple of potential KPIs. It might be that in our particular business, productivity, we're saying, is a key area, and we might have a number around productivity. It could be, if we're a software developer, it could be our utilization rate, or it could be our time working on projects. And on the right, then the critical number for that could have come to the fore for this 90 days is, we're seeing too many bugs that are coming through the business. So we're spending time fixing things instead of working on client projects and moving things forward. So for this next 90 days, maybe the time spent fixing bugs becomes a critical number and reducing that number, or maybe it's the overall number of bugs themselves. If we're and we had this specific example come up the other day on one of our smart boards with a manufacturing business. Maybe it's the uptime of the machines. So the machines need to be operational basically 100% of the time, and that's a key performance indicator that we've got generally going through the year. But for this quarter, we've realized that actually that's dropped, and the reason it's dropped is because the machines haven't been maintained according to their maintenance cycle. So there's a critical number for this next 90 days, which is to service all of those machines. And Louise, I wonder whether you wanted to say something there about, because you mentioned before about it's not always about the ideal, the okay and the not okay number.
Yeah, because we when you look at the critical numbers, the way we put them out there, you've got an ideal number, an okay number, and a poor. So you set this at the beginning of the quarter, or you set it out at the beginning of the month, what it is you're going to measure. What is your measure of success? And sometimes people think that, for instance, you'd have to have, so if it's all machines serviced this quarter, then you might say, well, ideal is 100%, okay is 80% of the machines, and maybe poor is 75% or less of the machines. But you could have an example where it's an all or nothing situation. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with having, a very black and white situation in that case. We had one, for instance, recently. We were delivering a particular program, and we needed to make sure that all the program was delivered by a specific date. So it was a case of, 20 people completed that program was ideal. 20 people completed that program was okay. And anything less than that was not acceptable. So that in that case, your critical number doesn't have to be a range. It's a very clear, it's a success or it's a failure if you've missed it by the one. So I think that was something that we just wanted to make clear.
Thank you, Louise. And then picking up a little bit on what Granger was saying before, then actually, this made me smile. Granger dug this out actually and sent it to me. Made me smile. We always think about, again, the numbers, key performance indicators. Well, here's a new way of looking at it as keep people interested, keep people informed, keep people involved, and keep people inspired. So it's very much not just about the number itself, it's about how that number itself can help to achieve the interest, the informed, the involved, and inspired. So in other words, all of those great things about clarity, alignment, communication, and empowerment. So that essentially is everything that that we wanted to talk about from a critical numbers point of view. The challenge that we'll leave you with on that, the thinking, is how are you going to go about identifying your critical number? And I have put in brackets numbers because maybe it's okay to have a couple for the next quarter. And so have a think about that. I'm going to stop sharing the screen for the moment and just say just to the team, is there anything first of all that I've missed, either Granger, Luke, or Louise in particular? No. Okay. So I wonder if we've got any questions, and I'll need the team to help me to identify people that might be raising their hand, given that we've got a couple of screens. But any questions? We've got a couple of minutes for a Q&A. Oh, all gone very quiet.
We're all very quiet.
I think you did it too well, Kevin. You should have left something out.
Could be, or have I?
Well, it's either that or he's completely confused everybody, which,
Yeah, I suspect it's the latter.
I think everyone's thinking about their critical numbers.
Let's see. How are we using critical numbers in our business? Who's who could we?
I know Steve uses critical numbers a heck of a lot, so maybe he should share with us.
Yeah, Steve Bradstock.
Okay, so critical numbers within the accounting side, we've got a set of fairly fixed overheads. So we've got a fairly standard margin as well. So our critical numbers form part of our break-even point. From other aspects of the business, the engineering side, we've got critical numbers to hit. So we've got sort of 4-hour response times, 1-hour response times, 8-hour response times. And that obviously our ticketing system gives us those critical numbers that we need to be hitting. The other aspects of the business with our sales and marketing, we've got critical numbers that our sales team needs to hit, and the forerunner to that is the number of leads that we generate. So we've got a critical number of leads to generate based upon our conversion rates. So there's 3 or 4 examples of how we use them in our business.
Brilliant. Good. Thank you, Steve. Any thoughts on those, Louise? Yes, you look like you're about to say something.
Well, I was just going to introduce Helen because Helen's put her hand up.
Ah.
Yeah, my question, hi there, Kevin. My question is, so if say one of my KPIs was I need to get 10 Google reviews or in a quarter, right. So could the critical number be, because does it have to be defined? So obviously I would ask every one of my paying customers for a review, but that's not actually a number. So how can that work?
Yes, I think that's a good point. Sometimes it doesn't necessarily need to have exactly a number, to the nearest decimal point or something ascribed to it. It will be linked very much to your priorities. So every 90 days, you're going to work out, and certainly working with us in that way, you're going to work out what those priorities are for the next 90 days, and then ideally there's one of those maybe that bubbles to the surface that's like the overarching critical thing that we need to do, and there may or may not be an absolute number with a decimal point attached to that. But it is about, as Granger was saying, the really important things is getting that clarity, that agreement of this is what we really must achieve in this next 90 days, and then defining that as in as smart a way as possible. So that comes back to that specific, measurable, accountable is RA, is what we do, and realistic and time bound, so that when we're setting certainly priorities, that's what it needs to be. So therefore there should be something specific that we can measure about it to know that it's a critical number if we're going to do that.
Right.
Just to bring something else in on that, Helen, you said there weren't any numbers involved in that, but actually there were 2, which was you wanted 10 Google reviews. So that maybe is one of your critical numbers. So the 10 is ideal, maybe 9 is okay. But you also said, I'm going to do that. This is the process bit, by asking all of my customers. So again, that's asking 100% of my customers. Yeah. So there is something, and just having that, it just focuses you on, actually, I do need to do this. I do need to ask 100% of my customers, because I've now got that as something that is specifically identified as critical to us getting to the point that we want. So there's often, it's interesting when you start to look into, there are often numbers that you can just pull out that will just, and the purpose of them is really to focus you on achieving whatever it is you need to achieve. It's providing that focus. We had a classic one around, so recruitment is another one, where you're looking at, you need to augment the skills in the team. You could set a critical number around the number of people that you recruit. So for instance, if you're looking for 2 people, 2 is ideal, 1 is not. Is okay, and none is poor. So you can find ways of just targeting yourself on those and providing that little bit of extra focus.
Okay, thank you. Cheers.
Great. Any other thoughts or questions?
Yep. The other thing I was just going to bring to mind, Kevin, recently I read a very interesting article, and it was talking about the word priorities. Okay, and up until the 1980s, it was only ever the word priority. It was about choosing one. And in
Right.
business speak in the 1980s, it changed into priorities.
Yeah.
So if you think about it in terms of your KPIs, your handful of numbers that drive your business, those are your priorities. Yeah. But the critical number is now in this quarter, what is your priority? What is the most important thing to drive your business forwards?
Yeah, no, that's really, really interesting. Thank you, Granger. And just going back to what Steve Brastock was saying, he talked us through a number of numbers, which were really his key performance indicators. He got some indicators for finance, some indicators for marketing, whatever else. The question then is, what is the one for this next 90 days that we need to focus on that will make the most difference? Mike from Grubs Up, you've got your hand up. There you go.
I'm unmuted now. We're okay. Yeah, just going back to Helen's and adding on from what Louise said. I mean, those two critical numbers that Louise highlighted, they're asking 100% and to produce 10 reviews. I suppose the things that strike me there is the other numbers, as far as the measurability is concerned, is, are you getting 10 reviews if you ask 100 people? And actually, there'll be a reason why you want those 10 reviews. Are you accomplishing that? Is 10 reviews enough? So there's a lot of analysis to be done afterwards on those basic numbers, which is where we get the measurable, is that a sensible target? Am I attacking it the right way? Is it giving me the result that I actually wanted as well?
Very good.
You get what you measure, is a saying.
Yes, no, very good. Thank you, Mike. And I think you've highlighted the thinking that goes behind this. Is very easy to just, this is my critical number for the next 90 days and not give it too much thought. The more thought you go into it with your teams and do the kind of thinking Mike was just talking about there is, why is this important to us, and what are we going to do about it? How are we going to make it better? All of those good things are what we need to do. And it's just another one of those great habits to get into. And the more you do it, the more that you'll get attuned to it, and you will hone your skills at setting, but then also working on those critical numbers throughout each 90 days. Brilliant. I think we're probably done, unless anybody's got a final. Oh, we got thumbs up from Lizzie, but I think that's thumbs up rather than a question, is it? Or
well, no, it's just really an observation. I think, in my world of coaching, I think for me, KPIs are activity rather than necessarily targets, if that makes sense. So it's things like, how many connections you're going to make on LinkedIn, how many phone calls you're going to make. So not necessarily productivity, but action. So I just thought I'd just connect the two, really.
Yes, thank you. That's you brought that out nice and clearer than I managed. It is exactly that. If we just focus on the output, then actually, it's did we achieve it or not? And it's like, well, yes, we did, great. But if we focus on the behaviors or the actions that lead us to that, that's what's important. That's what I was trying to get to with not going too high level with thinking of it. Just try and make sure it's something that you can actually action and control and do something about. Good, brilliant.